tell you, the cell phone thing is bad. I mean, they might have laws prohibiting it, but they're catching 1 out of 100. For every one they catch, there's 99 people that are not following the cell phone laws. And the texting is what I really see. Hard to believe that people were texting around. So they're saying that it's not going to get any better. So here we have a situation where the operators put under extreme stress because of schedules. The management's well aware of it, and they've been well aware of it for months apparently, and they haven't done anything about it. Now I already knew this situation existed because back in the day when there was a time that I actually thought they actually listened and cared and all of that. Way back, we're talking way back. I had a similar situation on a schedule, and I actually followed it all the way up to, his name was Neil Smith. He was the Ken Zatarian at the time. He was a very nice man. I actually followed this up all the way to the top dog in the scheduling, where I explained the situation, and he looks at me, and this is an experience I'll always remember, of course, because it's a watershed experience where you really get it. You know there's no. He looks at me and he says, "We know that. We know. We're already aware of it." And I said, "Well, if you're aware of it, why don't you do something about it?" And all he did was point his finger up, and he didn't say anything. He just went. And I said, "You mean the people upstairs want it this way?" And he just nodded. He didn't actually say it. He played a very good, highly paid executive and not condemning his upper management. You know, covering through your bottom management. That's what they look for when they're hiring management. They're looking for people that will cover for them. They're not looking for certainly people like me. It's not what they want. Somebody who will actually look at the system critically and try to make things better for whatever it is we're doing. You know. So that was the watershed experience for me, because what it said was that they were well aware of their scheduling problem, and they were not going to do anything about it. They just weren't going to do anything about it, and that's how they were directed above them, at the higher levels, to make it run this way. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that the organizational failure breaks down the operators into emotional wreck, basically, because they're under stress, and stress leads to a whole assortment of side effects that are very bad, and one of them is, of course, you become impatient, you become intolerant, you become abusive with other people, and this is what I've been trying to get out for a long time now, is that people are always blaming the operators when things go wrong. It's always the operator's fault. It's always the operator's fault. What they don't see and what the media never looks at, and they have no interest in looking at it because they're the corporate media. And don't forget, TriMet is a corporate entity. It's government, but it's government that acts. Government now does not act like government. It acts like a corporation is. It functions just like a private, for-profit corporation. It does whatever is best for the people in charge of that corporation. In our case, it's the executives. It's either TriMet exists for them, above all, above the customers, above us. You know, we're low, very disrespectful of us, thinking we're all a bunch of dopes, and a lot of us are a bunch of dopes, but we're not all dopes. So I take exception to that, of course. So they're not interested in having the schedules done right. They're aware of the scheduling problems, but they're not going to change it because what do they want? For example, they want productivity. How many hours can we squeeze out of this operator of work versus sitting around? So they'll devise the schedule with the least amount of break time so that they can make us work like a dog. Now that might work in some situations, of course, but when you're in a safety-sensitive job, That's the last thing you want to do, is put stress on your. That's why things like the baby incident occur. Although that operator wasn't very good right from the start. But you put an operator like that into an abusive situation. You put an operator who's already on the edge of instability, a person who's unstable to start, and you put them in charge of a bus, and then you add to that a very stressful work environment. Well, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have babies thrown off buses. You're going to have very short-tempered operators who are messing with the public. You're going to have these problems because the working environment, which you have that schedule pressure. The schedule is everything in terms of the psychological state of mind of the employee. The schedule is it. Without the proper schedule, everything else is a useless exercise in futility. All the training you want to put us through is not going to be of any value if you have us in these stressful environments. And that was what I've been trying to put out all along, is that all of the problems that are here are as a result of the management's decisions. Yeah, maybe there's a employee who's somewhat questionable as an employee for the public. But at the same time, why are they creating a situation where anybody who's a questionable employee would have a stressful situation which would lead them to their worst type of behavior, which is, of course, abuse of the public. Now, the other point I wanted to make here also, before I'm at the final destination, was that McFarland had adopted the zero tolerance policy, no more tolerance. And whether you believe it or not, I'm sure this has contributed to the customer problems that we're having with operators, because he portrayed this zero tolerance attitude, and now there's cops enforcing fares everywhere. No more tolerance. So now you have operators also doing the same thing. They're like being zero tolerant. Now I hear lots and lots and lots of fare disputes over the radio, lots and lots of them. So when you're having that many fare disputes, I think that all stems from the zero tolerance policy that Neil has put out in the public here. It's like he said, there'll be zero tolerance of this particular item, and so we're not going to allow any more of this type. So now you're hearing all these operators questioning fares, which it was never our job to question fares, okay? It was our job to inform people, not to deny them boarding. But you hear all of this stuff happening now because of that fare policy. They're questioning all kinds of everything, man. Oh, this transfer's not right, or the code's not right. Lots of fare disputes, which is going to lead to unhappy people, and lots of problems around behavior. You know, we're not going to tolerate. See, a lot of this has come from Neil's zero tolerance idea, that somehow it's okay for him to adopt zero tolerance, but it's not okay for operators to adopt zero tolerance. See what I'm trying to get at? So anyway, that's what the point is that a lot of the problems we're having is his saying zero tolerance, and that filtering down into the public, into our staff at large, created a situation where a lot of the operators are thinking to themselves that they're not going to tolerate anything anymore, and become somewhat intolerant of the situations that are developing here. So again, it's connected to the management, and I can't tell you, when I do listen to these dispatch calls, how many of these fare disputes get called in. You know, you're not supposed to call those in. You're supposed to hit. There's a button, fare evasion button. Why don't they train the people out anymore about that? Because for the amount of calls I hear coming in about that, I'm amazed. It's like nobody's trained them on how to do the fares around here. It's like they're going to make an issue out of it. And I'm just amazed at how many operators are really making an issue out of the fares, and that's just not part of the deal. And it wasn't part of my training. It's supposed to be a fare informer, not a fare enforcer. Hit the button. Okay.